The issue of insecurity in Nigeria is one that has been a major concern as the country is yet to solve the lingering problem. Earlier this week, the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria issued security alert over elevated risk of the attack on the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Reacting to this, Inspector General of Police, IGP Usman Baba, ordered the increase of security activities in the Federal Capital Territory as part of new efforts to secure the nation's capital and contain threats of any nature. In line with the new measures, the IGP announced the commencement of a counterterrorism operation and simulated exercise codenamed Operation Dakin Gagawa, and a quote. So joining us now this morning as we discuss this latest threat to our national security and what needs to be done to bolster our security in the country is retired Major General Henry Ayoola, former Commander of Operation Safe Haven in Jos Plateau State, and Adekoya, fellow Institute of Industrial Security Zonal Provost Marshal, Association of Licensed Security Practitioners of Nigeria, and CEO PR24 Nigeria. Welcome to the show, both of you. I'll start with you here, Yekachi, and I'll come to Major General afterwards. We have these threats every now and then. What's supposed to be the best reaction? Because apart from the simulated drills and everything, the Minister of Information came out to say that it's fake news, it's clickbait. And a lot of people are confused. So what should be the information pathway as regards things like that? Because there's a lot of mixed messaging. If DSS could come out to say that we're working on it, police IGP say we're working on it, Minister of Information says it's fake news or clickbait, who is to be believed? Isn't lack of information synergy even a threat to national security itself?
Yeah, I think that we have some issues in terms of our security culture. The culture of countries like United States is quite precautionary. So in risk management, we talk about a precautionary approach, or you talk about out of an abundance of caution. You see issues like this are treated very proactively in the US. As a matter of fact, if you visit the websites of the Department of Homeland Security in the US, you will see that the report on the U.S. suggests that the U.S. is under a constant threat of terrorist attack. And the U.S. is what you call like a heightened environment. So if they use the same language for Nigeria, I don't think they have gone out of their norm. The language is precautionary, it's advisory. As a matter of fact, the U.S. has a National Terrorism Advisory Board that issues out learnings, drills, exercise, videos, knowing that if you provide the people with a level of situational awareness, you can deny the would-be terrorists that leeway to operate as they like, and then a people that are situational aware know what to do, you can then have a polity that resists terrorism, or then know what to do when there's a terrorist attack. So on the one hand, it's something that governments should do. It's something that the DSS has been doing. It's not just because the US came out with their own advisory, which I think is a bit belated. Because before they issued an advisory, we had seen something like that almost a week before the US-UK put out the advisory. As a matter of fact, on April 5th this year, we had the same advisory that something imminent was going to happen in Abuja. Fast forward to July 6th, the Kuje prison attack happened. So you can see April to July. So one hand, you can see that there may be some sense in being a bit precautionary on the part of the government, a government that has made a lot of efforts over the last 3 months. We've had several clearance operations in and around Abuja, Niger, Nasarawa, Kaduna. As a matter of fact, the GOC1 div has been very busy. The crime stats has gone down significantly over the last 3 months. You could also say maybe we're in the rainy season. It's not a fighting season. So a number of factors are playing out. Overall, the sense is that government is having a bit of a grasp over the issues. But matters of threats of terrorism like this, they can be sneak attack, they can be attacked by lone operators. Putting out an advice to make the people a bit more aware, it shouldn't cause too much of a foray like this. So it just depends on the culture. What's our culture like in Nigeria? If you see an alert, what do you do? If you advise, what do you do? We tend to be spooked unnecessarily in Nigeria when an advice like this comes out. Again, lastly on this issue, I think we are now edging closer towards the electionary cycle. For pre-election preparedness, it's okay to begin to thin out on staff a bit. So some embassies will begin to move staff to Lagos, coastal regions, because of their own evac plan, just in case things go south. So I think the US is just being a bit more proactive and precautionary. I don't think there's anything there.
Okay, Major, if you can have your take on this, sir. Same question.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Going in the same line that my brother Adekoya just said, I think these things are happening based on the reality of each nation. America, like he said, is used to having emergency alerts. So on a regular basis, even at county levels, they do emergency response drill, and all of that, and the people are aware and all of that. So it happened. But when you look, the way I would like to start to look at it is to look at our immediate past experiences, particularly around Abuja. That in a very large way will have affected the way that we will want, or our people will respond to any alert. Or we know that the month of May, there was, of course, starting with the attack of the Catholic Church in Owo to the Kuje Correctional Center break and attack. And then, of course, the attack on the Troops of Seven Gas Battalion. All of those chain of events have kind of sensitized the people. And so adding any alert, depending on how it's crafted and the way it's released, could exacerbate a fear level, in that sense. And like he said, you will see that the response of the DSS showed that there's nothing new. They have been giving several alerts since that last incident of the attack on the 7 Guard Battalion troops. You find that there have been a whole lot of, events going on, and serious security and intelligence operations have been going on around the FCT. And don't forget, security and intelligence operations don't lend themselves to publicity. So people may not be aware, but those within the security and strategy circle know that a whole lot of work is being done. And I've always been proud of our DSS. I don't think they've ever been beaten to it in terms of actually, getting the necessary intelligence and disseminating to the appropriate authorities. So what then should happen really? Of course, you can't blame the US because they are responsible to their own citizens. That alert was on their website for their citizens. So, of course, when they weigh the balance between will it provoke further trepidation of the people or in the interest of national, of their own nation, of course, they will always resolve it, into the advantage of national interest. So, one will not blame them. I think what is very key here, and I love the DSS response immediately to it, and showing, in fact, they made it very clear there that it's nothing different from the various other alerts they have been given. Of course, since that last attack, it became clear that there are sleeper cells, there are, some of these bad elements that have entered around the FCT. So it's a matter of keeping the alert on and then sensitizing the people so that they can respond appropriately. And I've noticed several times the police, the DSS, and other security agencies have put out some, what we call top tips, security top tips of how the populace should respond, when these alerts are released and, in order to help them to do their work and all of that. So I think it shouldn't cause too much problem. Of course, it's always better to err on the side of caution. On the government side, we can say a lot is going on. So it's also good to sensitize the people too, to be more cautionary than ever, and I think that's a good thing to do.
Well, Major General, you just said something now that the Minister of Information also said, when you said the alert is for the citizens of the issuing countries. And now the Minister of Information accuses Nigerians of taking a piece of information that is not meant for them and then using it to just cause panic. Is it right in that regard? Should Nigerians have just ignored that terror alert, that, oh, it's not meant for us, it's meant for Americans or the British. And then this counter-terrorism simulation that the police claim that they are doing across the country, that it will even include wives and children and all that. What's the counter-terrorism simulation? Must it take a terror alert from a foreign body for the Nigerian police force to start doing counter-terrorism simulation?
Okay, thank you very much. That gives me opportunity to expand on what I said. You know, I said since that last time, that July 5th attack on the troops of 7 Gas Battalion, there have been series of, security and intelligence operations going on, involving all the different security agencies and services. And like I said, because they are usually clandestine, people may not know. Okay, one of the reasons why the way we as our own government will take it differently from the American government is because Nigerians are already tortured, tormented, terrorized, and traumatized, that you don't want to exacerbate that state of affairs. So even when we have such information or intelligence, the way we will process it and take preemptive actions without necessarily raising, some form of alert is the way we have done it. Okay, for them, unless we think of which better other channel could they have used to get that alert across to their citizens without attracting our attention? I guess I'm not too sure I can think of any readily, but it's not something to be taken for granted. I mean, in strict answer to your question, because we are talking about our own security. They are living here. I mean, we are the ones that are the focus here. So there's no way we can just dismiss it, with a wave of the hand and say, oh, it's not meant for us. Of course, it's meant for us. It's about us. It's about our land. It's about our nation. So, and of course, you can't blame them for doing their own work the best way they know to do it. Of course, there are diplomatic channels where if they have some information, they can process it with our own, and there are liaison channels, with our own security people through the Ministry of External Affairs and all of that. But of course, they have to do their work. So we should do ours so that our own people too can have a level of situational awareness that is required, and then we continue to brush ourselves up on the appropriate response to these things. So that's the way I would see it.
Okay, Mr. Adekoya.
Yeah.
When you were responding to some of the issues, you sounded like you shared the minister's view that Nigeria is safer than before and that the security forces are proactive. Was that what you were suggesting? Are we truly in a safer country than before now? Just
small caveat. I've met the minister a couple of times. He's a fine gentleman, but he's a politician. He's paid to do a job, which I believe he's doing. No government will come out and tell you that we're in serious problem. Or if you do that, you will create a bigger panic than you already have. So you expect the minister to sound the way he's sounding. Now, on the facts on ground, I've said we are in a rainy season. The north central axis is completely, almost not, but significantly flooded. The roads are a bit marshy. The forest regions are not particularly accessible. So this is not a fighting season. I think that as Nigerians, we must accept the fact that the nomenclature, terrorism, has come to stay, as it were, as sad as it is. And so if we accept that, we can then begin to understand what our threat environment is like within the context of our threat environment. And typically we'll say Nigeria hovers between a medium to high risk environment. Depends on where you are and where you're traveling to. We have seen a slowdown in insurgent activities. In the last 3 months, we've not seen significant reports of ISWAP activities in Kwara, in Kogi. We've not seen significant ISWAP activities in Niger, though I will concede that on the 27th of September, we had kidnap of 10 persons in Abuja, somewhere around Abaji axis. We are now fraught with the issues of armed banditry going on. So I said the clearance operations of the government security forces seem to be gaining some steam. They are making progress. Some of these issues are abating. But the conditions that are necessary for them to remain are still there. I think those issues, you can't gloss over them. They are critical issues. Issues of our approach to security, how local is it? I've seen some of the presidential candidates come back, talk about restructuring of even the force structure in Nigeria. You may not be told, but we have significant amount of our forces hold up in the northeast. We have engagements in the southeast. The north central and the northwest had become our underbelly, as it were, of issues of insecurity. So I think that the government is now reposturing towards those areas which were hitherto abandoned. Now, Abuja in question, is Abuja particularly safe? In our small caucus, sometimes we talk very openly about, there are some concerns about the FCT, and I won't gloss over that at all, particularly around the Abuja Municipal Council area. And that's where you have Gariki, Sokoro, you have the major parks there. There are a number of slums and shanty towns around, and even crime statistics will show you that that's where you're having a surge till now. Areas like Abaji, Kuje, Buari, those areas are being managed, maybe because you have more of the operations there. Abuja is not structured correctly for policing because Abuja is quite divided by major highways. And then you have settlements, and then you have the seat of power. Everything you have in Abuja is seemingly focused on protecting the seat of power. And so that leaves some exposure. And I think that the force, maybe they are correcting it. So I can't sit down and say that all is well. I can't say all is not well. But based on what we know, there are issues. Are they working? Yes, the one div is working. The CEO of the Guards Brigade is also working. The police are working. The advisory from the U.S. government caught all of us unawares. And I'll be frank also with that. It's a bit late. We saw that information which they put out. They can't say with all confidence that they know exactly what it is they are suspecting, but they have a sense of something. Some of them assess that since the Kuje prison break, some of these people were known IED experts, terrorists, and the rest. They may be holed up somewhere in some sleeper cells waiting to attack. If you look at the cyclical nature of electoral violence, we are coming to that, the heating period now, where we begin to see some uptick in violence. So maybe they factored all this into their advisory and put out that advisory. We're not too clear what they've seen.
One thing I'd like to ask is, since the Kuje attacks, have all those that were released, have they been recovered? Have they come back to the cells? No. We've not heard anything as regards that. So what do the security architecture in the country do as regards that? And secondly, how can we bring in a national orientation agency as regards, disseminating information, getting people aware? Even with drills. I mean, I keep telling the story of one of the days I was somewhere in Charing Cross, and all of a sudden I just said, get down, get down, get down, get down, terrorist attack. And I went down on my feet, thought everything. And 15 minutes after, I said it was a drill. It looked real. But that was getting the people aware. We don't see things like that. And that's why you think a symbiosis between national, orientation agency and the likes should come in there.
Now,
that's for you and also for Major General. And I apologize, sir, for calling you Major the other time. Major General. I apologize once again, sir. Yeah.
No problem.
You first.
So in terms of arrest, I can tell you that arrests are being made. Some arrests were made in Kano of some persons of interest, some in Abuja, some in some part of the southwest. Some arrests were made in Lagos. So those arrests are ongoing. Have they completely recovered the persons? No. Is work ongoing? Yes, it is. We have some constraints, but let's go forward. Now, in terms of national orientation, when you see an alert like this, the thing is, what do you do? So what? The next question is the so what question. What should organizations do? A number of companies, and you won't see this in the news, are currently having festive period preparedness drills, election security preparedness training. A number of companies are having some of these terrorism attacks. They are simulating the attacks. They're having drills. It's just a cultural thing for us in Nigeria. We lack that culture of preparedness. And more companies must begin to invest in security education and security training. Because even as we speak to you, people are still being kidnapped in Oyo, in Ogun. So the issue of insecurity, the biggest problem to Nigerians is not necessarily ISWAP or banditry. The biggest challenge we face, based on statistics, is road traffic accidents. More people die from bad driving behavior, bad road conditions that you have than ISWAP or banditry. So granted, there's been an attack in Sudan just the other day on a hospitality center. So what for companies? What should we do? You're a news agency yourself or a media house. You have people traveling, going to cover the news, grant interviews. Now you have elections, snap protests, rallies. There will be some challenge to road travel. So what? There's an alert out there. So what? So I think that's where people must begin to invest a bit in preparedness and drilling their people to have a state of security alertness. So that's the so what. National Orientation Agency, they don't have an easy job. Nigeria is, the federal government is like a man that has married over 50 wives and doesn't have enough money to keep the wife. So I don't know how much they can do. But the local government is the tier of government that should be the closest to the people. And so maybe they can begin to have the police, the DSS. The DSS has a station chief in every local government, and have some of these security workshops, some preparedness training for the, so that if we see something, we can know what is suspicious behavior, what is out of place behavior, and then we can by ourselves reorientate the people and maybe achieve better synergy between the people and the government. So it's plenty work, no quick fix.
Okay. Major General, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start from the last part you mentioned about the job of the National Orientation Agency. One of my recommendations has always been the issue of forming a unified operation strategic framework for the nation, framing it and setting up a security sector committee, an interministerial interagency committee that will be meeting on regular basis. And so National Orientation Agency can be part of that, so that all of the work that the security agencies are doing that need to be disseminated to the populace, they can take that on, turn it to a program, create jingles, do all kinds of things, get the civil society organizations engaged, and prepare all kinds of programs and projects that we get this thing down to the citizens. Now, that's a very important aspect of it. But I think above it all, what I have always advocated, that we need a holistic review, recrafting of our security architecture. And thank God my brother, Mr. Adekoya, were on one platform together before we talked about this. That what we have been having so far is a default security architecture. We need to sit down now with the contemporary challenges, security challenges, and emerging security challenges, do a review, do a fresh vulnerability analysis, risk assessment, threat analysis, and come up, down the ladder of security architecture, from policy to strategies to processes to procedures to drills and routines, like the example you gave that happened in the US. In UK rather. We need that, so that down to the level of the area council or local government areas in the other states, there are these actions that should be going on. You cannot, in the face of crisis, do something you have never practiced before. Nations who know how things work and who know why nations fail also. These are some of the things that make a system. Okay, I've always talked about system of systems, where all of these, each one will form its own proper node, deliberately designed, carefully crafted, so that every person knows its own part and role and functions in this security architecture. And then so you can then, even the sighting of our security outfits, like my brother Adekoya said, some of them were sighted without any consideration for quick response in case of disaster and crisis. And that's why we find that oftentimes our response time is not quite effective, because some of these were maybe cited on some primordial considerations. I want to put one structure in my village or something, without any proper design or plan as to, does that help to fulfill the security architecture or the security policy or the security strategy? So these are an opportunity for us to do this holistic review and begin to put proper things in place and because again, we don't really have a framework for unified operations. The armed forces, for example, have the joint operation. They know what to do because there are doctrines, there are drills and processes for that. But for a unified operation that beyond the armed forces, involving other paramilitary and other agents, security and intelligence agencies, we need to put a framework. It's not supposed to be, for example, if the director of state security in the particular state or university now has some intelligence, there should be a laid down statutory process or passing it to the commander guards brigade and all the other security. It's not a matter of whether the man likes the face of the person who is there or whether they are friends or not. It's supposed to be some statutory system and processes, and that can be reviewed and be checked and be reported on. And if the person fails to do, it can be sanctioned for it, because it will be clear that there was a failure. So, and this is how, security breaches are traced. When you have such systems that have been rehearsed and practiced, and the responders know, one another, they've worked together before, they've rehearsed together before. So when you have a real situation, they know what to do. Now, we need to put that in place. We need to also think of higher security and defense management systems that are virtually zero right now. You find that most of the security or defense, chiefs and all of that, they operate more or less very free, because there are no instruments, like what you have, like in the United States, you have the Quadrennial Defense Review, you have the National Security Strategy like we have, then of course you have the Defense Security Strategy, you have the military, the National Military Strategy, National Defense Strategy. Then you have things like the Unified Command Plan, and it's reviewed every 2 years. You have several instruments like that. You have the National Risk Assessment that the Chief of Defense Intelligence writes for the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff on annual basis. It's written once every year. All of these instruments, they help to put in place the substructure for the security architecture. So these are some of the things that we need to put in addition to what the government is doing right now.
Okay.
Let me stop there.
Okay. I would like to ask both of you. This is election season. The politicians, they've signed peace accord, but from the language that we see coming from the campaigns, the rallies, there's so much vitriol, going on. And the question to ask is, what is your assessment of the threat situation, threat environment, level of preparedness as we move towards 2023? Let me come back to you, Major General, and then we'll come back to Mr. Adekoya here before we wrap it all up.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a very timely question, because that's where we are right now as a nation. Again, my last proposition about having a framework for the cooperation and collaboration in a unified operation setting. Now, that's the kind of thing that will have brought the security agencies together. I'm aware that the Chief of Defense Staff is trying in that direction to do something like that. Of course, that's more or less a personal initiative, and of course, premise on its own pragmatism. But there should be a framework. There should be, a certain, when the election is coming up like that, there should be a meeting of such a body. So each one will look at his own area of, top competencies to see what they are going to do concerning the election. I think that a meeting like that should be happening right now. And I hope is going on, so that they can look at the entire gamut from now that the campaigns have started to the end of the election, to even up to inauguration in 2023 May. Okay, so this is the way to think and to go about it, so that things are not hitting us, by surprise. And they'll be able to preempt, they'll be able to project and think ahead of what to do and possible, crises that may come up and plan towards them. I mean, you can never err, on the side of caution. So it's always good to be on that preemptive edge. Yeah, that's what I will suggest.
Okay, Mr. Adekoya.
Yeah, good question, Doctor. Mixed feeling for me. We have cause to be optimistic. The US had projected that Nigeria will break up in 2014 in the run-up to 2015 elections. Nigeria did not break up. As a matter of fact, the data will suggest that that was one of the most peaceful elections because when the then president conceded, everything just died down. 2011, in our recent history, was the most chaotic elections that we had. On record, over 800 people died. 2015, maybe we had 150 on record. Some of those reports understated. Now, in terms of my outlook to the elections, Tinubu knows Atiku, Atiku knows Tinubu, Atiku knows Obi, Obi knows Tinubu. So I think that in this election, the major parties are known to themselves. We have not heard any heavy rhetoric from the presidential candidates themselves. We saw a very cordial exchange of pleasantries between Atiku and Tinubu, I think somewhere in Kaduna or so. Peter Obi is known to, he was former PDP, now Labour Party. I think that among the actors, we expect to continue to see some camaraderie. So that's a good sign. However, the people in the Labour Party, the ones you call the obedient, are almost seemingly mixing up with some of the sentiments that led to the youth protests in Nigeria. So we've even seen the Labour Party presidential candidates come and say he's a peaceful person. Those supporters should be a bit more peaceful. So if we are going to see some spike in violence, I don't think it will be candidate-sponsored. It will be from their supporters themselves. And what we are going to be continuing, what we'll see increasingly is we've seen the walks now, 1 million man walk, 4 million man walk, and it looks like everybody's beating themselves to the walk. But the polling units are not there. The only thing is that they disrupt traffic. They are a challenge to business travel. The business community must speak up, try as much as possible to have your walks on Saturdays, so that we don't have, particularly in places like Lagos, that congestion. And generally, we're also saying to people that be careful of the paraphernalias that you wear. If you wear red, for example, and you stray into certain parts of Kano, it is assumed that, and you walk into another, so people must be careful of what they wear, what they say. Or you go to some parts of Imo where some reports are emerging that trucks with consumer goods are being hijacked and burnt down. And you go and say Milokon in some of those axes, or you say the PDP slogan. So people must we must manage the sensitivity. Interestingly, our cohesion index is become the poorest has ever been since the Civil War. Our cohesion index done shows that we're at about 44.2% in terms of social cohesion. There are a lot of issues that are seeking to draw us apart. And no matter who wins these elections, the projection is almost as though we're going to have post-election violence. Because if the APC wins, it will be assumed this. If PDP wins, it's assumed that. If the Labour Party wins. So I think that maybe the National Orientation Agency, the politicians themselves, should help all of us dial down the rhetoric a bit so that those of us in business can continue our pursuit of value in a sane and sensible environment. It's just an appeal. And I think every one of us, perhaps the media houses should also take them to task on the excesses of some of their supporters, because Nigeria is all of us. We don't want an Arab Spring post-elections in Nigeria. You can see the destruction in Libya, in Tunisia, and Algeria. We don't want that situation. So hopefully everybody can melembe, as we can say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adekoya. And thank you very much, Major General Ayoola, for joining us on the morning show.